Hello again, everybody. This is Ken Martinez from Mark Investments with the next video in our series, Borrowing Money. So let's go ahead and click to the Joint Venture tab and we'll go over that. This tab is really a lot of numbers, but it's pretty basic and just in terms of trying to give you guidelines on what you should be offering your joint venture partners. Let's start off over here. This is your estimated return on your investment, whether that's notes or real estate or something else. Again, the blue input cell, if you want to start with a lower return, you can enter a 5% or not. And anyhow, what I'm showing right now is a range from 15 to 25% is the range on your investment. Based on that, let's say we wanted to use a debt coverage ratio as a way to analyze what we should be offering our debt partners. I think that's a pretty good way. After all, that's what banks use. They use a debt coverage ratio of about 1.25, meaning they want a 25% margin of safety over and above what their borrower is obligated to pay them on their annual debt service. So they want their net operating income to be 25% higher than that. So there's some margin there in case the borrower runs into financial problems. If that's true, if banks are using that as a criteria, I think us as entrepreneurs, real estate investors, we could use that as the same criteria. I just think it needs to be higher, closer anywhere from 2 to 2.2. No right or wrong answer here. It's just sort of what I think about from my own personal situation. Maybe yours is higher, maybe yours is lower, but let's just go with this for right now. And let's say we were going to make 20%. We'll just take the middle number to make it easy. What we're really saying, if we think we can make 20% and we are joint venturing with a debt partner, that means really we should be offering them somewhere between 9 and 10% based on our underwriting criteria of a DCR from 2 to 2.2. And that's with a debt partner. If we were going with an equity partner, that's what these numbers over here. Now we always talk about a 50-50 split, in which case, we get 20% return, they get 10, we get 10%. But maybe after a while, we get a track record, a success record. We have more knowledge and experience. Maybe if we're doing all the work, maybe it should be a 55% split. So for every $100 we invest and we get a return of 20%, we get $11 and they get $9. Maybe that seems more reasonable after a period of time. I don't know. Same thing again here. No right or wrong answer, just something to think about. But I think as you get more experience, you should be traveling along to the right. And does that make sense with your DCR? Yeah, I think if you offered somebody 9%, that kind of falls in line with the DCR. So it kind of makes sense and probably should give you a nice level of comfort that you're offering about the right percent, somewhere around 9 and 9.5%, whether that's equity or debt. If you're going to use both, I have a little calculation down here. So all this does, I won't spend too much time other than saying maybe you had an equity partner and they're taking 20% of the deal and they're looking for a 9% return. That means your debt partner is 80% of the funding. And if they're looking for 9%, you do have to factor a tax rate because debt is deductible. So given these scenarios, and then put in what you think you would want, really as an ultra conservative, everything kind of a worst case scenario, I still want to make some return on my money of 12%, then you should be using 18% as your estimated return over here. So rather than 20, given this situation where you have a couple of partners, probably should be being a little more conservative and using this row to figure things out. So somewhere around the 8.2 to 9% return, a little bit lower. Let's go to loan costs. What I'm doing here is we're calculating what is the best loan given 5 different scenarios. And I have 4 of them are fully amortized and 1 interest only. But how do we know if we have different amounts for borrowing, different interest rates and different terms? And it's really not just the interest rate, it's really the whole entire terms of the loan that you need to consider when you evaluate what's the best deal for me. And since we're calculating costs, we really want our loan constant, which is the total payments you're going to pay annually divided by your loan amount, to be as low as possible. So you can see in these scenarios, and I kind of made these numbers up, loan number 2 is really the lowest, and that's really going to be the best deal, even though loan 3 and 4 have a lower interest rates. This one ends up being the best because we have a longer term. And so that's what we need to do. So you put in the numbers and you can evaluate multiple loans on what is the best deal for you. And as long as you can get a cap rate over that 7.7%, that's what we've written down here, you are going to have a spread that is positive leverage. That is a good thing. I've kind of made some notes over here, which is just simply saying if you're borrowing money and to lend money, either like in private lending, and even notes is somewhat kind of like being the bank and you're lending money. Just make sure you follow these guidelines, which is the interest rate you're borrowing is less than what you're lending, your length is greater than what you're lending, and your loan constant over here is less than the loan constant that you're lending at. The second section is really evaluating if I pay points and the bank is offering me, in this example, a 0.25% reduction in my rate, is that a good deal for me? Well, I've done all the calculations for you because this is a pretty common scenario. This just came up for me recently. So for these 5 loans up here, and I've just kind of put some points here. I made up these numbers from 1 to 5, you know, and we'll just look at this first one to see how to interpret that. What that's saying is we pay 1 point. That reduces our interest rate from 7% to 6.75. That costs us 1% of our amount, $1,050. We have a new monthly payment of that, new lower cost for savings of $5,264, monthly savings from $1,754 from $698 to $681, and that's going to come out to about 50, almost 60 months, 5 years to break even to get our money back. And is that a good deal? Maybe, maybe not. If you do need to consider how many months it takes to break even. And as long as you're willing to stay there more than 5 years, maybe it might be worthwhile. But if we're investors, we probably want to know what is our return on our investment of $1,050 to get this back, and that's 5.4%. That's not a great return, but keep in mind that you don't have to work for this. When you invest in notes, you are taking on a risk, and you have to go work for that high return you get on notes. Here, like if this was your home mortgage, that is pretty much a guaranteed return that you're not working for. So even though it's low, that's easy. That's an easy 5.4%, as opposed to having to work for higher returns when, for example, you invest in defaulted mortgages. Down here is just a little section. The third part is if you have a income property, for example, NOI 50,000, and the banks have 1.25. Again, based on these terms up above, what is the most they would be willing to lend you? And here are the amounts. And because this loan number 2 would end up being the most favorable, it's no coincidence that that is actually the highest amount. No coincidence that this was actually the lowest loan constant because you had the best terms above. So this kind of tells you what you're eligible for in terms of a loan. And that's pretty much it for borrowing money. Again, this is Ken Martinez from Mark Investments. You want to know more, you want to know how you can invest in this calculator for your own business, send me an email at mark55llc@gmail.com, and I'll get back in touch with you guys. That's it. Thanks.